I'm so happy that Secretary DeVal's schedule has finally allowed her to address this pressing issue here today. Madam Secretary, there are 200,000 students that are still waiting to have their borrowed defense claims processed by your department. The Education Department has not approved a single new claim for loan relief in the past 18 months. If a student takes out a federal loan to study at an institution that behaved fraudulently or deceptively, that student's loan should be forgiven. Mr. Chairman, tens of thousands of borrowers acted in good faith as they applied to school and took out loans looking to better their lives. Because of bad actors, they were left with unfulfilled promises, outright lies, and mountains of debt. I believe that it is incumbent upon us to provide relief for those harmed by schools that acted in a fraudulent manner. Secretary DeVos, you wrote with extreme displeasure on the document that discharged loans that had already been through the BD process prior to your appointment. Why would you write that? Why would providing relief to defrauded borrowers whose claims have been reviewed by experienced professionals displease you?
Congresswoman, very good question. Very simply, there was no process. The claims were simply forgiven without consideration for the individual circumstances.
Secretary, I heard you say that. I want to tell you a story about a borrower from Florida named Jessica Madison that gives me extreme displeasure. In January 2017, Ms. Madison was told her borrower's defense application had been approved and that her $19,000 in student debt would be forgiven in 60 to 120 days. It was not. And instead, the government began garnishing her paycheck to recoup the money. As a result, she did not have electricity for weeks because her garnished checks couldn't cover the bills. How is it possible that the Department of Education could have continued to collect Ms. Madison loans after she had already been approved for a borrowing defense loan? After the Washington Post wrote about her story in July 2017, the garnishment stopped. They did not refund her money. Just $2,000 was refunded of the $12,000 that had been garnished from her wages. Do you believe it is appropriate to not fully refund wages that were garnished for student loans that were deemed fraudulent?
Congresswoman, when a student's borrower defense claim is deemed to be, they have been financially harmed, and we have a process to consider that, the level of that, the students are made whole, and the students, we address each student's issue and situation individually. That's why it's important to have a process, because every student's situation is unique.
Do they get all of their money back that was taken from them?
It depends on the various claims.
Because of these wage garnishments, Ms. Madison could not afford to see a doctor to address the intense pain she was experiencing. When she finally did go to the hospital, she was diagnosed with cancer. In October of this year, she passed away. Secretary, can you commit to me today that you will personally ensure that Jessica's wife will receive the remaining $10,000 owed to her by the government?
Congresswoman, I can assure you that we can and will look into that specific situation if provided the details. And once again, I go back to the fact that all of these claims, all of these students' claims need to be considered individually. I have worked in education my entire life. I've dedicated my life to this work. I've worked with Democrats and Republicans to advance the goal of quality education for young people. I've had some honest disagreements with my friends in the Republican Party about how to move education forward, but I've never, not one time, believed that they were out to destroy public education until I met you. Why has every decision you've made harmed students instead of empowering them? Are you the Secretary of Education? You are supposed to be their champion. When you approach a public school, you are protested. If you entered, you are booed. When you spoke at an HBCU in Florida, 2 months later, the president was made to resign. You are the most unpopular person in our government.
Millions will register to vote in 2020. Many will vote to remove you more than to remove the president. I yield back.